Bitcoin. Some see it as fake internet money, and some, like us, see it as the financial future. And for many right now, the discussion is Bitcoin a store of value? Is it a financial tool? What is Bitcoin? And so we're going to talk about, is Bitcoin a store of value? Is it digital gold? We're going to talk about the comparisons, and really the answers might shock you just a little bit. So with that, please remember, every single day in crypto is an adventure. So if you're not a subscriber, now's the time to hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button too. I would greatly appreciate it. And with that, let's get into it. I have a short clip to start off with.
Regarding cryptocurrency, I know the Securities Exchange Commission one is currently regulating it. Do you have any position or thoughts regarding, from a monetary policy standpoint, the impact of cryptocurrency?
This was 6 years ago.
You know, from a monetary policy standpoint, the implications are not large, certainly in the near term. People are not using cryptocurrencies in large size for payments, for example. It's really been more of a store of value for some, and you can see that it's highly volatile. So I think it's not attracting a lot of success there. We can.
You know how far we've come. So this was Jerome Powell 6 years ago, talking to Congress, I believe. And so, back then it's not really significant. He says it is somewhat of a store of value, but it's like, it wasn't even an event 6 years ago. It wasn't the talk of the town, and everyone wasn't talking about Bitcoin as anything much. He's just saying, people buy it. They don't really do much with it. My times have changed, but let's talk about store of value. So look, a store of value has characteristics such as durability. I have to go over these notes with you. It doesn't degrade or spoil. Gold doesn't corrode. Well, that's pretty cool. Neither does Bitcoin. Stable value. It's not highly volatile. It resists large price swings. Liquidity. It can be easily exchanged or sold when needed. Widely accepted. People generally agree it has value. I would say that Bitcoin is definitely 3 out of these 4 things. And the fourth piece, I think, is coming into its own right now. And that really is the piece of volatility. And so I do believe that Bitcoin is durable, it's liquid, it's widely accepted. Widely, I wouldn't say overtly wide, but not a lot of people own gold either. But I do believe it's widely accepted. People generally agree it has a value. But let's look at this right here. When I talk about the volatility piece, Bitcoin, in 2017, 2018, when that first video was shown, it had a huge, wide volatility. Look, the gold line is gold. The black line is Bitcoin. And gold has a relatively lower index of volatility than Bitcoin. But look, Bitcoin's is starting to normalize. It's starting to normalize, and it doesn't swing. I mean, look, the gold's been more volatile in the last year than Bitcoin, according to this relative index of volatility. But Bitcoin, as it normalizes, as it's starting to be adopted by institutions, countries, companies, everybody, it will start to normalize as an asset class, and volatility will start to shrink. With shrunken volatility, so is the opportunity of exacerbated returns. But that being said, let's go back here. So stable value, it's not highly volatile. It resists large price swings. We're starting to come into less volatility, as far as the price swings go. Now, going up is okay, or going down, it's not an option, but it does happen. But the volatility in swings is what makes it not a stable value. So also, this gives examples. Gold is definitely one. The US dollar, relatively stable fiat currency, though it can be subject to inflation, but it's basically considered a store of value. People do store lots of money in dollars all over the world. Very, very accepted form of value. Bitcoin, again, increasingly seen as a store of value. This is from ChatGPT. I don't do all this research just on my own. I do have a little help along the way. But I've got another video. This is about 8 months ago.
Do you think it's a store of value?
I think that narrative is being decimated as we speak.
So therefore, you don't think it's a store of value?
I've never really bought into that narrative. I think as basically this becomes a larger part of institutional portfolios, you can expect that it's going to correlate with more assets.
So you just think of it as a speculative stock?
No, I think it's a new way to exchange value with someone who you may or may not know across the internet.
But if you're Larry Fink telling people to go buy the ETF or some of the other,
I think you're saying that to call any asset a store of value is on any given day, the store of value might be X, on another day it might be 2X, another day it may be 0.5X. It doesn't mean it's not a store of value, but you think that there is a utility to having Bitcoin be able to transact across the internet.
Yeah, very much so. I think it addresses a corner case on the web.
So there's a lot of skepticism still. This individual started to backtrack on a store of value. She's basically saying it's a store of value. Anything's a store of value. I mean, you can store value in pretty much anything. Not really by the definition that we talked about earlier, but as a store of value. But she says that the narrative is being decimated as we speak because Bitcoin was down 12% at this point. Because it's the volatility piece and goes back to the definition of a store of value. Does the volatility alone, is that an issue? But if you look at the correlation with gold right here, so, gold was just chugging along. Not a lot of movement in gold for many, many years. I mean, it did track, 12, 13, $1,400 until we got to the 2018 little mini recession. Gold started to spike up 1,300. But, the 1,600. But look, it did go up. Bitcoin, this white line here, it started to move up with gold, started to outpace gold, and now it's starting to move together. There's a high correlation between gold and Bitcoin. It hasn't become the flight to quality asset quite yet, but even in the last couple of days with the trade tariffs going on, Bitcoin did not grossly fall down like so many other cryptos and the stocks. It didn't fall at the same rate of stocks. And so for many years, the last couple of years, at least definitely the last year when stocks went down, crypto went down way farther. Crypto is a 24/7 market. So if stock market goes down today, the crypto market could go down tonight. But what we've been seeing is that Bitcoin has relatively stayed stable throughout these changes. We've seen Bitcoin not make the big price swings that the stock market has done. I mean, look at this. I mean, you see that Bitcoin's been kind of trading around this 82 to 85 range all through this tariff talk in the last couple of days. And so if that's the case, it's becoming more stable, less volatile, a better store of value. Not necessarily tracking gold, but it's not tracking the stock market. Maybe it's starting to diverge a little bit from the stock market. That would be cool. Here's a little correlation with the equities. With the stock market, you have blue, we have the U.S. equities. Talk about volatility. I mean, they don't have this big the price swings, but it's never a straight line. And then the S&P 500 in this pink line, and look at Bitcoin right here in the middle. Well, this is on different charts, but right here in the middle, Bitcoin, outpaced, but it does come in with liquidity. When there's liquidity in the market, both of these assets, the stocks and Bitcoin, they do tend to rise together. Now, Bitcoin's taken a pretty decent hit in dollars, but as a percentage I think, right now the stocks have taken a bigger fall in the last couple of days. But Bitcoin, if you go back to the inauguration when Bitcoin peaked, it has taken probably a 20% hit, and the stock market's very similar to that. But lately, in the last couple of days, it has been diverging. And so it's become kind of I don't want to say a hedge against the stock market because we're not there yet, but it's more tracking towards gold than it is equities right now in the recent past. And let me fast forward from that last clip that was 8 months old to this one that was just a couple days old. Let's talk about it.
And look, that there are a lot of different stores of value over time. Bitcoin's becoming a store of value. Gold has historically been a store of value. I think what's interesting is where do we see the gold demand coming from? A huge amount is from China.
Yes.
Where...
All right, well, let's just go back. He breaks down. That's Scott Bessent. He's the new Treasury Secretary. We're talking about one of the most powerful men in the world right now, the Secretary of the Treasury appointed by Donald Trump. And he puts in Bitcoin as the first thought of store of value. It's store of value, Bitcoin's becoming a store of value. Gold's a store of value. It's in the same sentence as gold. Jerome Powell did the same thing recently. Kind of a far cry from where he was 6 years ago, but he's saying it's a legitimate store of value. I'm paraphrasing on that one. And by the way, this isn't financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. We're just having a conversation here about Bitcoin as a store of value. So really, we have a lot. The evidence is strongly suggests it's a store of value. We all know it's a store of value. I can take my dollars, I can buy stable coins, I can buy stocks, I can buy mortgage-backed securities, I can buy T-bills, and I can buy Bitcoin. And I can buy Bitcoin, I can hold Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin that I hold and buy, it's durable. It doesn't degrade or spoil. It's fairly stable. It's starting to become more and more of a stable asset. It's not highly volatile. It resists. It's starting to resist larger price swings. It's liquid. It can be easily exchanged or sold when needed. There's big markets for Bitcoin. I mean, big markets for Bitcoin. It's widely accepted. There's lots of people that understand and agree that it's a store of value. So as far as Bitcoin being a store of value, I do definitely agree. As it being digital gold, it is finite. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that are ever going to be mined, ever. So that number is never going to be 21 million, 22 million. It's going to be 21 million. And so that's actually, in 1 million's locked up with the Satoshi, I believe. And the United States has about 400,000. You have MicroStrategy or just Strategy that has about 500 and some thousand Bitcoin that probably won't be sold unless they absolutely have to liquidate. So it's really not 20, and probably 1.5 million have been lost altogether, maybe even more than that. So all in all, there's probably there'll be less than 18, 19 billion or million Bitcoin out there. And that means if every millionaire in the United States wanted one, they couldn't get a whole Bitcoin. So if you have a whole Bitcoin, that's a big deal. And so I see it as a store of value currently. I mean, this isn't financial advice, but I see it as a place to hold. And it's been doing historically, it's created average returns of about 40% a year. Now, I don't think those are going to keep going up at that same rate. It'd be very difficult for that to happen. But as we see this asset start to normalize, we're going to see those returns become way less. And then it will become more of a digital gold and maybe a flight to quality. But right now, it is a solid store of value. And I believe in its, in the way it goes up. It has come down, and we've seen it come down, make big swings, 50% in 48 hours. But right now, it's starting to normalize more. And with that, you're going to see it become more of a stable store of value, and people have more faith in it. And when people have faith in a stable store of value and they need a place to put money, they're going to buy. And if they buy, it's going to drive the price higher. And because of the limited supply, the price will get squeezed at some point. I mean, I look at this chart right here and I say, you can't see that. I look at this chart right here and I say, geez, we have been consolidating for months. It's only a matter of time and some kind of catalyst that just drives this thing up. And if you look at this, what is that catalyst going to be? Well, in my opinion, we have a very large narrative right now of the tariffs. When the tariff narrative starts to unwind and unravel and come to an end, and the liquidity narrative starts to come into play, look, I know this is somewhat diverged from what I just said, but crude oil, the cost of oil, boom, $61 a barrel. We were at $86 a barrel just about a year ago, less than a year ago. And now we're down 61 cents, or $61 a barrel. Before we know it, we're going to be $50 a barrel oil. We're going to have price of gas be, $2 and less in relatively normal states that don't tax the crap out of it. And in Europe, where they tax the crap out of it. California, where it's $7-8 a gallon right now, or in Florida, it's $3 a gallon. Those suckers over on the West Coast, sorry if you live there and have to pay all those absorbent taxes, but Florida does exist. That being said, there's a lot of things that say the liquidity, when you have the inflation come down, when we have some, other issues, I do believe inflation is going to come down. Governments create inflation by definition. And if we have a government tariffs don't create inflation, governments do. Governments print money. By definition, inflation is basically caused by printing of money. It's technically caused by the rising of price, but price rises because we put more money out there. People take the money and they buy more goods and more goods with it. The price goes up. Now we have to pay them more. Now we have the wage price spiral. I'm going off on a rant. Let me pull it back in. All in all, I do see Bitcoin as a store of value. Here's something that's put out by crypto.com. They say, is it durable? Yes, Bitcoin is durable. Is it portable? Yes, you can put it in a key, you can have it on your phone, you can transfer it pretty easily. Is it fungible? Interchangeable? Yes, I can sell my Bitcoin for a lot of different assets, through an exchange currently. Is it scarce? Yeah, there's only going to be 21 million of them. Verifiable and censorship resistance. That's the beautiful thing of Bitcoin. It is verifiable. The blockchain ledger is 100% verifiable, transparent. It's very decentralized, so it's censorship resistant. Liquidity and utility, yes, it's very liquid. I can sell it if I can go on right now to an exchange. As long as I have electricity, I can go and sell it. History, it doesn't have a long history. It's not like gold with thousands of years of history, but Bitcoin has a 15-year history, 16-year history or so. So with that, I would say that in my humble opinion, Bitcoin is a store of value, and it's a store of value that could possibly continue to appreciate over time and not have a lot of interference by so many like fiat currency does. And even gold is manipulatable. Everything is manipulatable, obviously. I don't know if manipulatable is a word, but I'm going to use it. And with that, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them down below. Do you think Bitcoin is a store of value? Do you think it's a digital gold? What do you think Bitcoin is? With that, I will see you next time.